guys, and welcome back to my channel. So this video is long overdue. I had told you guys back when I did my initial video about my no spend and no processed foods challenge that I would eventually do sort of a debriefing recap of how things went. And as you might notice, it is now August and I'm just now getting to this video. So my spending ban / no processed foods challenge was inspired by this book that I read called The Year of Less by Kate Flanders, and I will link it down below so you guys can check it out if you want. And she actually did an entire year, but I decided to just do 3 months. So I did my challenge from mid-April until mid-July, and I'm now, a month later kind of thing. And I've been putting it off. I've been putting off doing this video because I felt like there wasn't a whole lot that I could really say. I didn't not spend money during this challenge, and I didn't eat a lot of processed foods, but I also didn't not eat any processed foods. So in the sense of like winning at the challenge by not spending any money, I don't think I did. In the sense that, as someone commented on the first video, this sounded more like a mindful spending and a mindful eating challenge. I think that's a lot more accurate of a description for what I actually kind of wanted to get out of this, because I was in kind of a place where I had just moved, and so I still kind of needed / wanted things for my apartment to really make it feel like home. I came back from my trip in April and started sewing, so that was a new hobby with, kind of a investment in terms of time and money to get that started up. And so these things sort of happened while I was doing this challenge. So if I look at my spread that I made for this challenge, which is right here, you guys can see that it's definitely not full. I didn't buy a lot of stuff, but I did buy some things, and I did eat some things that I kind of considered processed foods. But I don't know. Yeah, so as you can see, like, I'm having a hard time kind of talking about it because I just don't really know what to say. I think it was an interesting kind of thought experiment, and I think that if I were to do something like this again, I would definitely rework the parameters, because it is more, it's more of an exercise in being more mindful with my money and with what I eat than it was in not spending any money on this. And I think part of that is because I've actually been working for the past couple of years on really trying to figure out where my money goes and trying to budget it and trying to be just more mindful in general about how I spend my money and how I save it and like where I allocate it and that kind of stuff. So for example, for a lot of people, something like a spending challenge or like a spending ban might be useful if you always go out and get coffee, or if you always 3 times a week you go out and get lunch when you're at work, or for things like that. But the reality is I don't have a lot of those types of expenditures. I almost never go out for coffee except for with friends, and I do have a special dedicated section in my budget. And I will tell you, I usually dedicate about 100 euros every month to going out for coffee with friends, going out for drinks, going out for dinner. And almost every single month I only use maybe a third of it, and the rest of it gets put towards something else. So either I roll it over into my stuff I forgot to budget for section, or I roll it over into savings, or I realize that I need to replace a pair of pants, and so I roll it over into my clothing budget. Like, I actually don't really use that money for going out to eat and that kind of stuff very often. So I really had kind of a hard time with this because, I stopped buying clothes in general because I started sewing. So, if I was going to go into a store and look at clothing, for the most part, I didn't really buy anything. I don't think I bought any clothes during that 3-month period of time, because I was like, okay, well, I can go in and get inspiration, but I'm going to end up making stuff. And I did realize, for example, I am not really at the point where I'm going to be able to make a leather belt. So I put that on, I could buy this if I found something that I liked. Or, I'm not really at the point where I can make leather shoes. So if I need to replace shoes, those are the kinds of things that I'm going to be eventually buying. But I don't really have that urge to go and buy random shirts from H&M, for example, which I used to do. And I think that part of it is just this kind of process of working towards knowing where my money's going, trying to work on saving more money and all of that kind of stuff, that by the time I actually did this challenge, I was at a place where when I spent money, it was usually for something that I needed or was something that I considered an acceptable sort of impulse buy. So for example, I do have on my spending ban list that I bought some candles. I think what it was is I bought 2 little candle holders, and I bought like I think I bought 4 taper candles and like 2 little like fat squat guys. And all told, I spent 13 euros. Like, you know, I'm not going out and buying a $50 Yankee candle, but I'm getting ones that look pretty. They're in nice colors that go with my apartment and that kind of stuff, but it was only $13. And so that was in an impulse purchase that I was like, yeah, I'm okay with this kind of thing. Like I have room in my budget for this. It's something that I really like because, you know, when I have dinner, sometimes I want to do candles, or if I'm sitting and reading, I want to be able to light some candles and that kind of stuff. And also they just look nice on my bookshelf. And so I'm okay with that kind of thing. So I really had a hard time sort of thinking of this as a spending ban and like a processed foods challenge. However, I will say that there were a couple of things that I really worked on during these 3 months that I think were improvements kind of in general. So the first one was definitely I started sewing, and that has absolutely changed the way that I go into stores and the way that I shop. I really now, when I go into stores, if I go into stores, I'm looking for styles that might be something that I could find a pattern for and make myself. And I'm keeping an eye out for things that I wouldn't necessarily be able to make myself. So for example, when I was back visiting my parents, I ended up buying a really thin like down vest to wear under layers. Now, that was after the spending ban, but it was the kind of thing I was like, I know I'm never gonna be able to make a vest like this, like obviously, but I also know that I tend to get really cold, and a lot of times like I just want another extra little layer. And this one was perfect because it wasn't super expensive. It didn't have a stand-up collar like a lot of down vests do. It was very small, and it like squished up into about this big. And so that was something that I hadn't necessarily actively planned on buying, but it's something that's been in the back of my mind for a while. That I'm like, oh, if I find one, that would be a really nice like layer to have in my closet kind of thing. And so I ended up getting it. So that's definitely kind of changed just how I look at going into clothing stores, the types of stuff I actually am buying, and the types of things that I'm then saying, okay, I want to start researching patterns and looking for fabrics and all of that kind of stuff. So that type of spending has definitely shifted. It's not that I'm not spending any money, because obviously I'm spending money on fabric and patterns, but it's shifted, I guess, is how I'll leave that. The other thing is I have started working on recycling more. So the way that like the trash system here in France works, it was very confusing for me for a while. A lot of times apartment buildings don't necessarily have trash pickup, or they will, but they won't have recycling, and you have to find it like out in town or whatever. And I have managed to find a little recycling center just like on the street, but that's on my way to work. And so once I kind of saw that and I figured out what I could put in each box, I've slowly started increasing the types of things that I am recycling. So that's something that was one of my goals for the challenge, and it was one of those things that I've actually managed to put into place. You know, I have a bag in my kitchen right now that is dedicated for recycling. It's just like a canvas bag I have that can kind of stand up on its own. And so that was something that has really helped, and I've noticed that that means I don't have to take out my trash as much because I am using less trash. I end up actually having to take out the trash because it's not because it's full, but because I have like food scraps that I end up having to get rid of. That's the other thing. I was looking into composting, and our city doesn't really have like a citywide compost. They do for literally like specific streets. So it's something that I want to look into more, but right now is not something that's very feasible just with like where I live and what kind of space I have and all that kind of stuff. But it's definitely made me think more about how I can sort of reduce the waste that I make as, you know, an individual person living alone with food waste and just general scraps and that kind of stuff. So that's something that I'm definitely working on. What else? Oh, I think the other thing that's kind of motivated me was just looking more into ways that I could reduce waste outside of just like trash. So for example, I have experimented with making some of my own like skincare products. So for example, I've made some toothpaste, and I've made like some whipped body butter. And so I'm looking into things like that, trying to make some shampoo, so that maybe I don't necessarily replace everything yet, just depending on how things work, but to get to a point where I'm buying less of that kind of stuff. So I know this is going to be a really like kind of weird rambly video, but that is because I have had a lot of thoughts in my head about doing this challenge, and it's not as cut and dry as I thought it would be. And so I really was having a hard time kind of figuring out how to talk to you guys about it and see. So I learned from this challenge. I think it was a good experience. I think if I were to do something like this again, I would rethink my parameters, and I think I would couch it more in terms of a mindfulness practice rather than a ban or like a don't do this kind of challenge. Because I think in a lot of ways I'm at a point where a mindfulness thing is going to be much more useful with where I am in my life than a don't buy this thing is going to be, if that makes sense. So yeah, if you guys have done anything like this, I would love to hear your thoughts on it. And if you guys end up reading the book and do a challenge, let me know. I'd be really curious to see what you guys learn from it, because I think it's definitely a very personal sort of thing. You know, everyone's at a different point in their life, and so what is going to be like the most important thing for each person to focus on is really going to depend on what their goals are and like where they are already in, you know, in their journey of budgeting or learning to not do like impulse purchases and that kind of stuff. So yeah, that is kind of what I've got for you guys in terms of this challenge. I'm sorry that it's not more of a, oh my gosh, this changed my life kind of thing, but this was what I actually got out of it. And so even though it was really hard for me to find the words to kind of explain it to you guys, I hope that this was helpful in some way, shape, or form, at least gave you closure, and you know, you're not left thinking like, oh, whatever happened with this thing that Caitlin did like a million years ago. So here you go. This is the closure that I have for you guys. If you guys end up doing a challenge like this, or if you end up reading The Year of Less, let me know. I'd love to hear about it. And if you guys have any other comments or questions, leave them down below, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye. Hey guys, so if you've made it all the way to the end of this video and are actually watching my end screen and you're not subscribed to my channel, I would really appreciate it if you would. There's a little button right there for you to do it. And if you're interested in watching some more of my videos, I have links to 2 of my older videos off to the left there, so you can check those out if you would like to, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.